All right, everyone, it's 11 o'clock on Pacific time. Welcome to the first National Cyber League Coaches Call. I'm Dan Manson, I'm NCL Commissioner. Doing the call with me today is Dr. Stephen Miller, NCL Chief Coach Ambassador. Unfortunately, Caitlin Bestenheider, who is the NCL Chief Player Ambassador, will not be able to join us today. We're very excited about these calls as an opportunity to reach out to the NCL community and to have coaches really be more involved with NCL. If you are not on mute, please mute yourself. It will make the call go much smoother if you mute yourself. And if you have a question, please click on the raise hand button. And if you click on the raise hand button, we'll get around to you asking your question. Or you can also use the chat window to ask a question. We have new resources on the NCL website. And I'll start off by kind of navigating through the website and pointing out some of these resources to you. Here is the NCL website. I hope all of you can see it. If you cannot see it, please send me a chat message. And I'm going to start off. We have someone who's not muted. If you can please make sure that you are muted, that would make the call go a lot smoother. Sam, that phone number that you have there is my phone number, so that's myself. And here is the way the spring season is shaping up. The pre-regular season is the same as before, $25 per individual. There is a change to the postseason. Postseason will be $10 per player, and the team size will be 2 to 5 players per team. And this is the schedule for the spring season. We still have someone who's not muted. If they can make sure they're muted, I may have to go in and find you. First question is, can a school have more than one team? Definitely. We encourage multiple teams. We encourage as many students from a school to play individually and as many teams that can play from a school. But the difference is it's now going to be $10 per player for postseason, and team size will be 2 to 5. Regular season registration for spring will open on February 26th. Regular season registration will close on March 25th. And then we will have a few days of late registration from March 26th to the 28th. And postseason registration will also open up on February 26th. So we have a much longer period now for postseason registration, and that will continue till April 25th. We want to emphasize that in order to play postseason, you must have played in the regular season. So postseason is dependent on you playing in the regular season. Sam is asking if there's anything students do prior to 3:30. Before the gym opens, no. Stephen, do you want to jump in on this? The registration period until we get to gym training, are there resources up available? Is this something for players to do?
Well, what we do at our school is we actually have some that are in classes that the NCL is incorporated into that. So they have labs that are geared toward practicing before the gym opens and during that time period. Also, there's several, the coaches should be working with their students to give them information about what it takes to win, for example, how to prepare, what tools they may need, and then how to use those tools. So we kind of use that time period. If you look at, in fact, we have on the syllabuses that we provide for NCL in the classroom, we kind of follow that same process for non-classes, for students that are just wanting to participate. So we give them access to labs. We use the NICE challenge in one of our courses. So there's other things you can do to prep. And then the puzzles, of course, the past puzzles, we provide those to students. So that's kind of a good time period to get the students to start looking around. They also have them go to a Cyber Skyline and take a look at what that application looks like. There's a demo on there. Get familiar with that. Get familiar with the ethics and the codes and the rules and the website. Also encouraging them to go to the different videos that are available to learn more about NCL. And there's some websites out there that also provide some insight on what you need to do to prepare.
Too funny.
Yeah, I would say, especially for new players, it's good to spend some time with the resources. It's good to spend some time understanding the puzzle categories. So if there's some categories that are new, you may want to do some work on your own to get up to speed on them. A question from Parker is, have you thought about reversing the order of the team and individual rounds so students can learn from their peers? That's an interesting question. It's the first time I've seen that question. Stephen, I don't think that's ever come up in our discussions about having the team game first. Do you have some thoughts on that?
It hasn't come up in our discussions. That is a interesting idea. And, we actually have our individual students, they're going to be on a team together practicing. They practice. And so maybe having that team is something you ought to consider and talk that over with your NCL directors and see if that's something they would consider doing, and then do the individuals after that. Right.
Next question is, do all members of a postseason team have to participate in the regular season? Yes. For any player, if they're going to play in the postseason, they need to have played in the regular season. Well, I will click on some of these. Where can I find past puzzles? Stephen, do you want to take that? Is that on the site?
We have our past puzzles that we had pulled. I think the ones we actually been using are pretty old. They're from a couple years ago, but I think last in the fall it was on the site. I haven't looked this time to see if it's still on the site. You may want to look under.
Yeah.
If you look under the, I believe if we look under the fall, the spring season, and then go down to the NCL gym, it may have some information about it there.
Yes. We'll follow up on that one.
Yeah.
But that is a good question. Would you be able to provide links to the resources that were mentioned, Cyber Skyline, previous challenges? Same question. So if we go
we can work with Lynn and have that, if it's up to it's up to the operations team if they want to display that, but we can definitely provide.
Right. I'm looking to see where we might have that. That's a very good question.
Hey, Dan,
Yeah.
I just posted the link to the older challenge.
Oh, thank you, Doc.
No problem.
So yeah, so here's a link on Challenge Solutions, and if you click on that, that should take you to the puzzle examples. So let's take a brief look at some of the classroom resources. Here we have a NCL in the Classroom Planning Guide. And one thing that we really wanted to do better is the steps that are followed in registering and forming a team and making sure that everyone has done what they need to do. So we have flow charts here, and we have a flow chart for the coach. So this is for coach, team, and batch registration. So especially if you're new to NCL, please make sure that you spend some time with this document. And then for student registration, we have a flow chart. And so I would encourage you to distribute this to all your students. So that's a new document that we have for you. We have sample instructor syllabi for the two knowledge areas, and this is something that's contributed by Stephen. Thank you, Stephen.
You're welcome. We have a couple of those. Some of those we use the different lab resources, and so that's flexible. You'll have to use the resources you have at your institution. So for example, you may have physical labs that you use. That's fine. In our case, we used to use the NDG-Net labs. Now we're on the Infosec Labs, so we use Infosec Labs. And in addition to that, we've incorporated some of the nice challenge puzzles into our classroom to help prepare. So it's kind of, this is just an example, so you can kind of see what you have as far as your own lab and assessment resources, and then try to incorporate those. But this is just a good guideline and a shell, you might say.
Yes. We have a question about the old format of the two individual rounds. You know, there are reasons that we decided to go with one, the timing of the season, the timing of what we wanted you to do. But that's a good point, and we'll discuss it on among our board. But I think it is a bit of a time issue for us. Is that the way you're looking at it, Stephen, as well?
Yes.
Considering the gymnasium is open past the end of the postseason, any chance of open enrollment for new recruits for the next season? That's an interesting question.
I think that could be a challenge for the vendor. You know, we have to coordinate all that with Cyber Skyline. So I think you know, those are some of the things that have to be brought up with them. But I'm not on that part of. You all are on the director side. So
yeah. We can bring it up. So basically, we actually did have this discussion in the past of having a season pass. So instead of just signing up for a season, you were signing up for the year, an annual pass. So I'll bring that one up again, but I appreciate the question. The question about players having 56 hours. Well, the number of hours you play is not something we can really control. We did expand the time available to play because that was one of the requests that came from the NCL community. But it's similar, I guess, in a way. Well, Cyber Patriot does have the fixed 6-hour window, but we don't have a fixed window, Stephen, correct, for you to play. So it's basically during the entire weekend that you decide when you're going to play. But that's something we can also bring up. Steve, do you have any thoughts on that about having a fixed amount of time to play?
Well, I think it's all set around the time zones, if I remember right, and I think it's good to have that fixed time, and the students are aware of that. I know we have had some challenges with our high schools. Some of our participants at the high schools were also in athletics, and so there was a conflict with some of their games at one time. But so we try to work around. That's why having that in advance and try to get the students to understand what the schedules are going to be in advance, then they can plan.
Right. So the question about having a limited number of hours once you start, but we'll bring that up.
Oh yeah, well, I don't know. That's again one of those. It might be something that's a challenge for the vendor. They'll have to figure out if. So you're saying each individual would only have 8 hours to participate?
Right. It's a fixed window once you go in. But we'll bring that up. And so now we have something that works for some people may not work for others. For community college students, the fix wouldn't work. Having the whole open weekend works the best. And we've had different ways of playing over the years. So we can always revisit, but that's the way we have it currently. Yeah. Is there a reason why the game needs to be over the weekend? That's something we can bring up with the vendor, but I think that from a player standpoint, there may be advantages of having it over a weekend. Maybe 1 week. Yeah. I think it would be difficult to have the game open for 1 week. I think that's something that there's a lot of resources that Cyber Skyline puts into running the game. And so I think it stretches them right now to have it open for the 56-hour window. I don't think they could go any further, but we'll bring it up. So this is a reason to not have it over the weekend, to have it in a class. Stephen, the point was making is I would love to have it during the week so I could have it in a class. Any thoughts on that from an instructor standpoint?
Well, I think that could be a value. I know for the high schools it would be because they, I think it might work out. But our students are all online, and and most of them are working, and it seems like the weekend's a better time for them. But I think everybody's going to have their own case on that. So I don't know. Yeah, I think you could maybe bring that up at the next ops meeting.
Right. Sam, the reason for the preseason game is that it's not, it doesn't go into the scouting report. It doesn't have a lot of the emphasis that we have during the regular season and postseason. The preseason is basically to give a chance for those players to test it out and put us to be able to rank them. So the preseason game is not as intense from a management standpoint as the regular season and postseason. Yeah, that's a good point about CCDC invitationals. Yes. Well, we can certainly discuss the advantages and disadvantages in going forward in the weekend versus during the week. It's difficult to find a time frame that will work for everyone. Stephen, you can help with this one. Do we all need to compete during the same time frame? So you have 20 students at a school. They really do not need to compete during the same time frame. Is that true?
No, they can, based on their schedule. You have that time period. I guess somebody needs to mute themselves.
Yeah.
So that
If I can find who it is.
so.
All right.
Okay. So the time frames. I mean, each student can. The way it's set up now on the weekends, they just whatever they put into it. If they want to spend the entire time working on that puzzle, that's up to them. Others may only spend 2 or 3 hours. So we don't put any requirement on that. If you had it in a classroom, I guess you could keep them on in that time period to work on it, like in a study lab or something. There was Dan. There was also some questions about the Infosec Labs, and this could be Infosec or NDG or whatever. But basically, those labs that we basically assign them labs during the NCL in the classroom course, where they either use the ethical hacking labs or the security plus labs. And those labs, if you have to subscribe to the Infosec, you can go to National Cyberwatch and look for their labs on there under courses, and they have what's available. But we basically
hey, I was
require.
just going to crash in here and work for a bit before the meeting. I have a conference call to try not to fall asleep too.
Okay, can you put that in the chat window, please? And the person who's on 916-757-7406, can you please mute
Well,
yourself?
I figure I'll at least put down my computer so that way no one can take this during curriculum committee, and I will relocate for no, I don't know what I'm doing ever.
Okay,
really.
Can you please mute yourself? All right. If you have a question, please put it in the chat window. It would be hard for college students during the week. Yeah, I agree. We have trade-offs with the time period that we run it. Okay. Right. Do you have any thoughts about what we're doing with the Facebook website or with the videos? We're trying to take a kind of a multiple approach to communicating with you and telling the stories. Let me click on Crypto Kate. So Kate Bestenheider, our NCL Chief Student Ambassador, has a blog where she talks about National Cyber League and a lot of humor in the blog. We'd like to be able to do some more in terms of outreach to tell stories about you. So let me make a plug right now. If you would like to be on the Thursday Night Live show or like to help us communicate your story, please feel free to contact me. And my email is dmanson@cpp.edu. Could you clarify the labs that are available on the National Cyberwatch website? So we're talking about, the Infosec Labs. Stephen, have you used those labs?
Yes, we're using those labs. We currently use those labs in our courses. So there's several different labs available, but the ones we use, the ethical hacking and the security, which is basically security plus introduction to security. And our students are required to complete those labs prior to the time at the that the gym opens. So that way, and we tie those labs to what's going to be in the puzzles for each competition. So if you look in that, I think on the syllabus, if you go in and look in the syllabus, we basically use every one of the labs. So if you were looking at the Infosec Security Plus labs, every one of those labs from securing the PF Sense firewall to implementing NAT and allowing remote access to implementing common protocols and services, all of those, examining wireless networks, every lab, and I believe there's like 15 labs in those Infosec Security Plus labs, and then the same way with the ethical hacking. So we alternate. Sometimes we use the ethical hacking. Sometimes we use the Infosec. Because there's only a 6 months time period for the access code, we let the students, if they already have the access code for ethical hacking, then they can use that one. If they have the access code for Security Plus, they can use that one during the course. Because
question, I think, on the Infosec Labs, are the labs Infosec Labs free?
No, they're free for the institution, but they cost the students. And so you can, if you go to the National Cyber Watch under those labs, there's a link to get you to the Infosec Lab organization, and it'll tell you more about how you can set that up and what the price is. It's right now we coordinate all of our own lab administration, so it's like $80 a student for 6 months access. But that would vary if your bookstore is doing the administration of handling the access, then they add a overhead cost to that.
There are a couple other questions related to labs. Has anyone compared the JBL labs to the Infosec? Stephen, do you know anything about the JBL labs?
I don't know about those. Like I said, we used to use the NDG Net labs. We also use the, like I mentioned, the NICE challenge as an assessment tool for them to prepare. And again, you can see that in those syllabi that are out on the NCL website. But I think that's up to you what you want, and that'd be good to share those. In fact, you know, any of these resources that someone else has, if they want to share those with the rest of the NCL community, I think that would be great. I know
if you have recommendations, I think it'd be great to put it in the resource section. So yeah, Stephen said, please share with us what you're using.
I know that there's a blog out there from 2015 that we used to use. Justin Ray was the guy that developed it, and he has a lot of good information on that. I can probably get that link. We can ask him if he'd give us permission to put his link on there.
So there's a posting that the practice season was not at the same challenge level as the regular season. But I think what, Vitaly, I think what you're saying is the challenges for the warm-up should be more difficult.
Right.
So
yeah.
We can bring that up in the board. I think the one of the goals of the practice season is to help you gain confidence, but I understand what you're saying is you would like to toughen up a bit more to get ready for the regular season. Let's see. Infosec there's a link here for Infosec. Stephen, what do you think about that in terms of having students go up the curve more prior to playing the regular season?
I'm sorry, I didn't get that.
So the question was, the practice season doesn't have complex enough puzzles. Okay.
Well, yeah, I don't know what if we could have. I mean, that's something we might want to talk to Cyber Skyline about, is having them maybe put some of those puzzles or a set of puzzles in there that would be a little bit more challenging. But I don't know what the answer is to that. I mean, we're doing, like I say, we just use what we have there and try to, with our labs and the nice challenge and looking at old puzzles, and that's about the best that we can do. And ask it, and then also there's some websites teaching the students how to use the tools they're going to need during the competition. I think is a real good is more important actually than some of the other things. And there's some really good sites.
Do you teach Wireshark?
Yes. Yeah.
Are there other tools besides Wireshark that you would recommend that students get used to?
Yeah, there's several that we have a list of links and tools, and like that students we ask them. Snort is another good one. The Network Miner, Foremost. There's other ones out there that we can actually. I think I can get that. We could get that list together and talk about it with the ops team and see what they want to put out there and what they don't want to put out there.
So I'm seeing the link to challenges you have, and do you have a link to tools on your syllabi?
Not on that in that syllabi.
Okay. Well, that's probably something we can
put those in there.
Bring up. Yeah.
The tools that are in the labs, so you learn the tools in the labs there. So if you look at the, scroll down a little bit further and you see in the ethical, I think that's the one with that's the ethical hacking lab. So when you go into those virtual labs, you'll learn this different tools and how to use those tools in those labs. That's the whole goal of those labs.
There's
one
for
thing
me,
about
in terms. Go ahead.
One thing about the Infosec Labs that I like is that they do have a puzzle at the end of every lab that we require the students to complete. So that gives them some idea about solving those challenges in advance.
I've talked to students playing in competitions, and we've run the WRCCDC for over 10 years. And I don't know a better way to learn to play in whether it's a cyber defense or a CTF than to actually jump in and play. It's not something that you're going to really be comfortable with the first time you play because of everything that's thrown at you. It's not a classroom experience. It's a much more open learning experience. So I think once you get a season under your belt, you've learned a lot to prepare yourself for the future. I don't know better ways to become comfortable playing than to play.
Somebody mentioned the Kali Linux tools, and that's one of the key ones that we use. So that's a good point that someone brought out. I noticed in the chat.
Dan, can I make a comment?
Sure. Go, Costas.
This is Costas Torregas on the National Cyber League board. I think one of the things that is evolving in the chat room with all the great contributions that all of you who are participating are making is both a thirst and also a ready supply of tools that different instructors are using in different parts of the country for different kinds of audiences. But this idea about kind of organizing a resource kit of tools that are currently in use, and then maybe what's behind the tools, maybe syllabus and so on, might be something that's a little bit outside the immediate wheelhouse of the NCL, but I think it could offer some real practical help to our participants. So maybe both at the ops team level and at the board level, we ought to take a deep breath and start doing that. It involves some maintenance work. I don't think we want to get involved in evaluation. In other words, this tool is better than that tool because we'll be here until sundown. But all the things that I keep watching fly through the chat room are telling me that There's a lot of both thirst for and also supply of great tools. Thank you, Dan.
Thank you, Costas.
That's a good point,
And-
Costas. The students come up with tools too that I don't even think about, and so don't forget that these students have a pretty good insight in what's going on outside the classroom.
And there's something to remember with tools is that unless you understand the process of solving a challenge and get comfortable with what a challenge is, it's hard for the tool to really be used to its maximum advantage. There's having a tool, but there's also understanding what you're doing and understanding the steps that you're following. The tool itself won't solve the challenge, is what I think what I'm saying.
That's correct, Dan. I think when you're preparing and when you're into the games, you have to keep it simple. Try to have a process. We usually tell the students work on what you know, work on the easy, maybe jump to a hard. Know where you need to start, and then know Linux and how to use it. Know your tools that you have that you've practiced. So those are kind of some of the key general things that we tell the students in the course.
Stephen, can you talk a little bit about Nice Challenge? Is that something that you're starting to incorporate? And how does that help you?
For the NCL, we just tried that. We're just trying that this semester, so we'll see how it goes. But we tried to look at some of the challenges and how they might help the students prepare for the NCL. So the ones that are in there are some that we felt like would be help the students and help them tone their skills a little bit more. So we'll see how it goes. So it's something new for us. We'll see how that'll work out. And I think the challenge is very comprehensive. It tests not just the cyber skills, but your skills on understanding how to use the different tools in Linux and in Windows and whatnot.
So the one question was that with the tools being shared in the chat, will they be available after this meeting? We are recording each of these calls, and we'll make these available for you on the call and for those who couldn't make the call. So that's something that you'll have for future reference. But in terms of best tools to use, I think that it's something that can come from the coaching community, but it's also something we can assist. A question of downloading the chat. It's really the call itself that's recorded. I don't know how you separate the chat from that.
We could probably
Just
get the
take out the chat separately.
Yeah, I think that they can take the chat out so we can see how that works. Maybe Tasha can work that for us.
Yeah, I haven't done that before. I'll look into it.
Okay.
Tasha, would you record this? You're recording the chat as well?
I'm not sure how I know it records audio and I know it records what's on the screen. I'm not sure what happens with the chat.
Okay.
Well, I'm doing a copy and paste of the chat as we go along.
Yeah,
okay, good
backup.
There's
a simple way. There's also a simple way. There's a more button. I don't know if everyone sees it, but the more button in the bottom of the chat window, and then you can say save chat.
Okay.
And that goes to your finder.
Oh, good.
Got it. Thank you.
Thank you, Keith. That was a good point. Good discussion today. Are there topics that you would like to see us cover in future calls? These calls are going to evolve. We have things that we would like to cover, but we really want to hear from you. and know where you would like to go in future calls. So if you have ideas on areas you'd like us to work on presenting in future calls, please let us know. Stephen, how much time do your students spend on NCL when you teach a class?
Well, I would say that if you look at the number of labs they have and the challenges, that they're probably, with the challenges alone, they're open 2 days. There's 2 challenges, so there's 4 days, and they usually looking at the logs. It's not unusual on the nice challenge for them to be in there for a couple hours at a time. So and they on the NCL labs, I mean on the Infosec Labs and the NDG Net Labs, they're usually in those labs. Each lab is about anywhere from 35 minutes to an hour is what I've been seeing. And so I would say,
there's a question that, go ahead.
You know, I would say they're spending in the capstone class, they're probably spending a good 15 hours over a week on there. That's the feedback.
There's a question that came up that's a very good general question. How do we help students that are not confident that this is brand new to them? So, when I had Kate on the show, she talked about how she had never taken a security class. She was a theater major, and then she took her first programming class, and she was thrown into NCL at that point. But she was able to, it's like being thrown into the water and learning how to swim. What advice, Stephen, do you have for helping newbies, helping students that really don't have the confidence to have this type of open-ended learning environment?
Right. Well, we see that with our high school students, and we actually throw them in on their very first dual credit course that they have to participate in the NCL. And so there's a lot of them that are not even majoring in IT or cybersecurity. There may be nurses or going into even, I had one student last semester that's going to be a welder. So, but they're required to take a certain science class or tech class. So what we try to do is let them know that not everybody, you're not going to be, it's not any, you learn from your mistakes, you learn from experience. And so what we try to do is say, so try this out, see how you like it. And also, we try to provide them the tools and the support that we can. I think Caitlin has from a student perspective, could do a better job of explaining what the students feel than what I felt, because when I first did a NCL competition, it wasn't. I felt pretty good about it, and it kind of gets addictive. So I think you just have to know that you can't, you may not know everything, but you're learning as you go along. And I think we try to focus on some of the open source puzzles for the students in the high school and the easier challenges. And they don't get a grade on how well they did, it's on whether they participated or not. And that's in the high school sessions. Now, that may be different for everyone, but so they're not really, they don't really get that nervous about it. In fact, once they've done it, they see that it's kind of like any other game that they've been playing.
It's a game. It's not something that you pass or fail.
Right. That's exactly.
I think it's a mindset that's important to have playing in a competition, that everyone gets the same experience. You're getting just as much experience as everyone else. And look, when you start, you're not going to do well. I don't know how a team can go into CCDC the first year and think they're going to go to regionals or nationals.
Right.
And I don't know if you've never played CTF, how you can expect you'll do well in CTF, but I do know every time you play, you learn. And every time you keep playing, you get better. So if you can help with that approach, I think that makes a difference. That it's going up a ladder. It's going up a curve. It's like playing a sport. You know, the first time I played on a baseball team when I was 10 years old, I stunk. I did the thing that everybody dreads. You strike out with the bases loaded, your team losing by 1 run. So I lost the game for the team. But this is something that's fun. You play CTF, you play NCL. And I hope that when you have new kids come in, that's the attitude.
Yeah.
Open source challenges for newer high school teams. Well, Pico CTF was brought up before. And so that's the Carnegie Mellon one. So let me go ahead and bring up Pico CTF. Pico CTF is the and they're doing it for middle and high school. So as something that's brand new, Pico CTF to me would be one of the ways you could introduce students to playing a CTF, to learning CTF challenges, and they've really gamified it. It is like kind of playing a video game. There are ways to introduce kids to CTF. And there's another link. Yeah, I know there are others out there. But don't get discouraged, and help your students not to get discouraged, because this is something that takes time to develop the skills for.
Dan, is your hope that the next time the coaches meet on this call, you'll have Caitlin maybe present a player's perspective and see if we can develop some kind of dialogue around that?
Oh, yes. We'll be using Caitlin extensively in future calls. And perhaps we can have a few volunteers from the community to help us lead calls in the future as well. I know that there are some great stories, and that's what we try and tell with the Facebook Live show, of participation and learning and benefits from NCL. So we hope to do that, more of that as well.
The coaches' calls will always be on the Zoom, right?
Yes. Yeah, Zoom is a great platform for having a lot of participants and for capturing and for having interaction.
Dan, I know that for our students at GW, one of the things that I'm always valuing very much is anecdotes of how participation in NCL or the actual scores that they got on the various scorecards and performance ratings might have influenced their career, might have influenced the job interview, might have influenced retaining a job. And I think that kind of post-NCL use of NCL materials and experiences could be really a significant factor, and something that many coaches might want to dig deep into, because that's kind of a great way to open up eyes in terms of why should kids play.
That's a good point, Costas. Stephen, you have a question. How do you grade student activities?
Okay, so the labs, they get grades for the labs in the preparation for NCL, and so they also get graded on in the NICE challenge. There's a grade option there that they get a grade on. So it's really all the prep is what they get graded on, and then they get they get points for participating in the different in the pre-competition, in the individual, and then in the game. Also in the game, we our teams are using tools like Slack, and so seeing how they participate in Slack as far as their teamwork and whatnot, there is some grading on that, and they do some self-evaluation of their team communications, their teamwork together, their interpersonal skills. So one of the things also around that whole thing is recognition. So we try to recognize, and this kind of helps promote NCL on campus. So we recognize those students that are participating. We have like T-shirts for them that they can wear around the campus and whatnot. So I think that helps. On our Mescalero Apache High School teams, they for their STEM conference and stuff, they kind of tie in the NCL logo for those, and they made their own T-shirts and stuff. So it's part of their, it's kind of like a Gen Cyber activity in a way. But so I think those helps recognize the students as well as that they're participating in this, and also helps promote the program.
Stephen, you had a student a few years ago, Johnny, that played NCL. Can you kind of, he's a real success story. Can you briefly describe his evolution?
Sure, Johnny Wright, he participated in 2014 for the first time, and he was a bronze, and he was overall was like 96, and or in his category was 96 overall. He was in the 30s, I think, in the bronze. But anyway, he ended up getting 18 job internship offers after that summer for because of his scores in the NCL, and he ended up going to work at Los Alamos Labs for an internship. He now works at Presbyterian, and he's working on his bachelor's degree. And so he was one of those, and you know, he's coached the team a couple times for some of the high schools. So it's just great to see somebody perform like that, and he just did really well his first time out. But he had already been through several of the courses when he participated in 2014.
Costas, this is a question, if you're still on, maybe you can help with. Can the NCL logo be used on T-shirts?
It would be our happiness if the NCL logo is used on T-shirts, pumpkins for Thanksgiving or Halloween, any other thing, as long as it ties to the theme of NCL, which is learning through competition, and as long as the T-shirts are somehow provided to team members that participate in NCL and perhaps many other events, absolutely.
Great. I think we only have a few minutes left. We really appreciate those of you on the call. We really look forward to future calls and getting to know the NCL coach community. We are excited now that it's more of a year-round with spring and fall season. And we hope that you'll also take a look at Facebook NCL Live if you haven't. And give us ideas for future shows there as well. Let's see, one more question here. Is there a license required for using our logo? Costas, I don't think there's a license. Is there?
I don't.
No. Again, what I tried to say is we are a community of academic faculty members and educators. And I think as long as the use of the logo and other materials reinforces the purpose of NCL, which is to improve educational approaches to students through competition, we haven't thought about licensing and so on. I think our hope is that the NCL logo can flourish throughout and pass the good word on. Absolutely. So thanks, Stephen, for the question. If you have any particular concerns, I'd be happy to write something, or Dan, as a commissioner, could write something for you.
When we started,
think this is a. Go ahead, Steve.
I was going to say, when we started with the NCL, I think it was in 2013 or 14. But anyway, we asked at that time Casey O'Brien, and he said yes, you can use the logo for the T-shirts. So we've been doing that ever since, and I don't think it's a problem.
We think that NCL really has value from other types of competition. So those of us in NCL are involved with CCDC and increasingly Cyber Patriot, but we think that what we're trying to do with NCL takes it further in terms of having the scouting reports, being able to tie it closely to your curriculum, and we hope that you'll continue to be involved and give us feedback, because NCL, we want to evolve with the needs of the community and where we can go with this type of competition. So we're going to go ahead and end the call, but thank you so much for being on it, and we look forward to our next call on February 7th. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Dan.
Coach call. Please come in. Let me just get off.